really excited to pick his brain today, talking about this soccer awareness and how the game is played in the modern game of soccer. So without further ado, I want to bring Wayne on the line. You there, Wayne?
I am, John, yes.
Welcome to the show, and thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks for the invite. Very good of you.
Wayne, our first question to you is what we do with normal of our guests is kind of ask you, how did the coaching, how did this all start for you way back when?
Way back when? Well, my grandfather played for Arsenal and Everton in what is now the English Premier League in the 1920s, would you believe? And so I guess it was in the blood from there. He gave me a soccer ball as soon as I could walk, and then it's almost from that day forward I always wanted to be a professional player. So I managed to make the professional ranks at Blackpool. Mm-hmm. Had a wonderful time there. I played professionally in Finland for a couple of years. And then I think the natural progression was to move into coaching. And I think one of the main motivations for me to move into coaching was to teach the things that I wasn't really good at myself, that I knew I needed to be better at, and I wish I had been better at as a player. So that was my motivation, and that's what I try and teach now.
I gotcha. And obviously, you've written, and if you don't mind, maybe touching upon real quickly about your books that you've written through the years here. Why the books? Why go into in depth about all of this stuff?
Well, first came to America about must be 12 years ago now. I'd already been the youth development academy coach in Blackpool after my playing career finished, and I started writing then, but just preparing session plans for coaches. And then I came to Minnesota in America at a club called Eden Prairie, and I had about 130 coaches to teach. And to be honest, many of them were very much in their infancy in coaching. And it's hard to get around that many coaches. So I thought, well, if I put it all down in writing, in diagrams, I can send it to them, and then they can start to learn from that. So I did coaching clinics to show them, and then I gave them information to back it up so they wouldn't forget. And then I thought, once I'd collected a lot of this information together, I thought, well, you know what, I might as well put this in a book. And really, that's how it started. And then obviously it's gone haywire since then. And I must say I really enjoy writing books now and providing information for coaches and players.
Nice. Well, kind of going in a little more detail into some of your work, Wayne. Obviously I've kind of been able to research and read some of your stuff lately here, and one of the things I want to talk about first is about the difference between technique and skill. Recently, I know you kind of talking about an article about the scientific basis for this self-awareness when it comes to the modern game of soccer. Can you talk to us a little bit of the difference between technique and skill?
Yeah, well, everyone talks in soccer terms in terms of technical, tactical, physical, psychological, and I think they should be technical, skill, tactical, physical, psychological. The skill part is quite simply the when and where of the technique. So, a lot of coaches, I think, do a lot of drills to teach technique without the kids actually having to think about what they're doing. They're just learning a technique, which is really important to start with. But then a lot of the kids fall down, I think, as players when they look to turn it into a skill. And I think that is the part that coaches need to improve in terms of their teaching the kids when and where to use that technique, and that's what the skill's all about. So you can have a kid who you watch and he's got absolutely incredible technique, but doesn't seem to create anything on the field. That's because he doesn't know when and where to use that technique. He might be a dribbler and he dribbles all the time instead of knowing, there's a time to dribble, there's a time to pass, time to shoot, time to cross. So that's really the skill factor, and that's the part I think I focus mostly on now. And I think that's the link individually to a team environment between technique and tactical, which is the skill factor.
So to just go into, because I really like this to understand this with our listeners. So when you talk about that, how do you, for example, how would you go about doing that? with a certain player? Like you talk about developing the technique. What are some what are some things you may do?
Well, I think one of the most important things to move into would be small-sided games, just 3v3s, because there's so many situations where they're making a decision. Every time they get the ball, it's a different decision, it's a different thought, right. and I think that's the way to go with the moving into the skill factor. And then within the small-sided games, you've got to try in training to try and guide the players to the right decisions. And I think the big thing is you shouldn't tell them what to do and when to do it. You should watch them train, identify what they're doing wrong, discuss it with them when the game has stopped, and then try and incorporate that into the 3v3 again or the 4v4. So really, you're encouraging the players to think for themselves. You're not thinking for them. And if they have to think for themselves, I think it leads to them understanding what the when and where much better than if you're telling them all the time. And I think that's a big problem in youth soccer, where coaches are just telling the kids too much on what they should be doing. It's like a robot, and I think it's completely the wrong way to teach.
And to go along with that, Wayne, I do want to touch upon this coaching style you're referring to. And from your experience here in Southern California to this point, it sounds like that's what you've kind of seen more of, where it's more like negative, I guess, to say. I don't know if that's the right word to use. Instead of this, I think you're referring to some positive style of coaching. Explain that a little bit to us and how a good coach should be.
Well, I think a negative style of coaching, which is, to be honest, I know this personally because I was probably one of the worst when I first started. Because when I played, the coaches, they told the players what to do when we were kids, when we were men. I went into coaching thinking it was the same thing, and then I learned that it isn't, because I didn't really get any good feedback from players. And so, and you go on your coaching courses, as you said about the A license, and you learn and you read, and you improve yourself in your training. So I know this is a problem because I was the world's worst. I like to think I'm at the other end of the scale now. But it's really about motivating the players to do their own thing and to make their own decisions. Now, the negative coaches, you referred to them as negative, I think it's the right word. They shout, They scream, they tell the players what to do, instead of the positive coaches who they do the talking in training, they do the encouraging and the guiding in training, and then in the games they tend to sit back and allow the players to make the decisions on the field, allow them to make the mistake as well, because they learn from mistakes. And I think perhaps the parents expect the coach to be on the sideline screaming and shouting all the time, and that's not the way to do it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, and sorry I keep referring to your own articles about this stuff, and I think you referred to it as like a command style. Is that right?
Yeah, command style. It's a command style. Do this, do that. Go here, go there. Well, the kid does it. The player does it, but he doesn't. Does he understand it? Does he understand why he's gone there? Yeah, I've gone there because the coach told me. But what was the reason? I don't really know. But I did it because the coach said.
Right, and I think what you're trying.
Coach, sorry.
Yeah, and I think what you're trying to do is to make these youth players more aware of what's around them, and they make their own decisions, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very simple formula. I mean, I'm sure they do it in the schools in the same way. Like, again, when I was in school many years ago, it was all, you copy it down, your teacher puts it up and they copy it down. Now, I'm sure they're doing what you should be doing in sport, is they're asking the kids questions to get feedback from them to make sure they understand what's going on. And if they're asked questions, the kids now have got to start thinking for themselves. And then after you've asked the question, and if they give you the right answer, then you say to them, well, show me on the field where you think you should be. So they've given you an answer verbally. Now they're showing you physically where they think you should be on the field. Now, if that's not right in the training situation, you can, again, guide them to a better position. But at least you're starting to form the self-thinking aspect of the training, which I think is the key to all soccer development.